Hello, my name is Matt Richardson, and this is my second attempt at Lakota Nation versus the United States video review. So let's see if we can get this one to work. So, Lakota Nation versus the United States is a documentary directed by Jesse Shortbull and Laura Tomaselli. The film was produced by Benjamin Hedden and Phil Pinto and released on July 14th, 2023 by IFC Films. Lakota Nation versus the United States was well received by critics, garnering a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes from 24 critics. Interestingly enough, Tomaselli and Hedden had previously worked together on the highly acclaimed documentary MLK FBI, which I also watched. It's very good. So, summary. Lakota Nation versus the United States tells the story of the Lakota people's fight for justice that began after the unlawful seizure of the Black Hills by the U.S. government in the late 19th century. The Black Hills are located on the borders of South Dakota in the southwest and Wyoming in the northeast, so it's kind of that little circle right there. The Black Hills for the Lakota people is a sacred land. They believe that the Lakota Nation originated from within a wind cave within the Black Hills. The Black Hills for the Lakota people is their Mecca, their Jerusalem, their religious and spiritual center. The origins of the conflict began with the signing of the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868, which guaranteed the Lakota ownership of the Black Hills in perpetuity. However, soon afterwards, gold was found within the Black Hills, and despite the agreement, the lure of gold and the ideals of westward expansion and manifest destiny led the U.S. government to break the treaty, forcibly removing the Lakota from their ancestral lands. And they talked about a bunch of different treaties. Many of them seemed poor at best. They specifically went over a treaty that they had gone around to the Lakota people. They had to go to each chief of each tribe, and they needed to get them to sign so that they could put the treaty into place. Well, almost all of them, if not all of them, signed with an X. Even for me, watching some of the quick flashes of the treaties, the legalese on the treaties made it very difficult to understand, even for someone who knows English. For someone who doesn't know English and has to sign with an X, I would say I'm fairly positive, and the filmmakers were too, that the Lakota people had no idea what they were signing, or at minimal, they had a limited idea of what they were signing. So at best, the treaties were sketchy. At worst, it was just a scam, plain and simple, a scam. But back to the summary. The documentary highlights the subsequent legal battles, which eventually culminated in a 1980 Supreme Court case, United States versus Sioux Nation of Indians. The court ruled that the taking of the land was illegal and awarding the tribe financial compensation. However, the Lakota people have refused the money, wanting instead the return of their sacred land, the Black Hills itself. Strengths about this film. I liked the historical depth. The film provided a clear, well-researched amount of complex legal and historical events, making them, I feel, more accessible to a broad audience. The film excelled in providing historical context without overwhelming you with data. The animated sequences were pretty cool, and they illustrated the chronology of the treaties, the betrayals, and the court cases, and then the voiceovers explain the cultural and spiritual significance of the Black Hills. The film is very careful to avoid heavy-handed moralizing, instead just allowing the facts and the voices to carry the story. And speaking of the voices, that was definitely another strength. The voices were very authentic, and the inclusion of interviews with tribal elders, legal scholars, and activists ensured that the Lakota perspective remained central and authentic. One of the film's greatest strengths is its array of interview subjects. Elders share stories passed down across generations, legal experts contextualize the Supreme Court decision, and activists discuss the modern day implications of the dispute. Particularly moving are the testimonies of younger Lakota who articulate the ongoing sense of loss and determination that propels their activism. Another strength is it was balanced. The documentary avoided sensationalism. Instead, it went for nuanced presentations of both legal complexities and personal story. The subject matter maintained a narrative balance, acknowledging both the complexities of the legal system and the clarity of the ethical argument for land restitution. The documentary does not villainize individuals. Instead, it critiques the institutional structures and cultural attitudes that have perpetuated justice. Emotional impact was another strength. The film conveys the emotional weight and generational trauma of the Lakota struggle. It does well in conveying emotional honesty. There are moments of quiet rage, sorrow, and resilience. Archival footage of children in boarding schools, footage of protests at Mount Rushmore, and scenes of prayer ceremonies on the Black Hills. Together, they all coalesce into a picture of both suffering and endurance. Additionally, the refusal of the Lakota to accept money compensation for the Black Hills, which, by the way, I don't remember what it was exactly in 1980, like $100 million, but now it's up to like $1 billion or something like that. The refusal to accept that compensation, despite the poverty that often plagues reservation life in general, it's not framed as stubbornness, but as a statement of identity and sovereignty. Sorry. The cinematography, fantastic. It was beautiful, visually striking. Footage of the Black Hills and archival materials enhanced the film's atmosphere and underlined the spiritual significance of the land. And it was done with reverence. There are a handful of weaknesses. I think the pacing was deliberate, but it was slow at times, particularly when delving into the legal intricacies. However, the documentary is well structured chronologically, beginning with the treaty area and progressing through each phase of the conflicts. The pacing is deliberate, but it's never plotting. The filmmakers make good use of on-screen graphics and maps to clarify like the shifting boundaries and complex legal proceedings that define the case. Another weakness, which some might find to be a weakness, is the lack of a concrete resolution. But this was reality. It reflects the ongoing nature of the real-life conflict. Rather than presenting the legal battle as a closed chapter, like 1980 Supreme Court, the end. It shows how the struggle for the Black Hills reverberates through to the present. The documentary touches on contemporary issues, land back movements, cultural revitalization efforts, and the enduring trauma of disposition. The intergenerational lens gives the film a sense of urgency and relevance. My biggest pet peeve for this was the limited counterpoints. The film mainly presents the Lakota perspective, which is fine. But I think that it would have been even better if they could have given, perhaps, maybe they tried and couldn't get it, but differing viewpoints or governmental voices. I sat there watching this and I thought to myself, why don't they just give the land back? I mean, it's a small area. It's not like it's billions of acres. And it's got to be definitely worth. I mean, would they rather give the land back or pay $1 billion? I don't know. So I would like to know, why don't they just give the land back? So my final thoughts here is that Lakota versus the United States is much about the future as it is about the past. Its themes of resilience, justice, and cultural survival are universal. They resonate far beyond the Black Hills. The film doesn't end with a resolution, but it does have a call to action, urging viewers to consider their own roles in the ongoing project of justice and reconciliation. Clock's in at just under 2 hours, which is average length for a film. And it's both a history lesson and a portrait of perseverance. But in the end, the documentary is less about the courtroom victory or defeat and more about the ongoing fight of dignity, respect, and self-determination. I think you asked one last thing. You wanted to see if we had any final questions that could be answered in the course. I think that was probably a typo because the course is over. But I would like to learn more about the treaties themselves. You know, how were they set up before, like, the trickeration would be involved? There had to be some legality to them, and how did they? What did that? You know, each of these treaties say in depth. You know, and why did it seem universal that the native tribes would just accept these? Maybe I'm not looking at it from a perspective of the length of time, but it's a lot of land to give up that the native tribes did. And I'm sure some of it was through attrition, war, and such. But it seemed like the treaties were the ones that were most responsible for the tribes losing their land. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. But other than that, looks like we're 12 minutes. So I think you wanted 10. So I think we're good here. Hopefully I can get this video saved correctly. I'm an old man, as you can see. I apologize for the lack of knowledge. I'm not a TikToker or whatever. I wanted to say thank you for the course. I appreciate it. I learned a lot. I like the details. I love the readings. The lectures were spot on. I think that I forget his name, but the last lecture you had us had us watch. That guy is pretty cool. But anyways, thank you for everything, and good luck.